technically, our job here on the show is to recap week 12. And we'll be doing that for today. We'll talk about Josh Jacobs going bananas. We'll talk about some key injuries and stuff like that. But honestly, I'm excited to use this as like a backdoor, like second preview show for week 13 because week 13's main slate kind of rules. I was excited about week 12 going in. Week 13 is already better, babies. We're going to break down what we saw in week 12, what it means for that awesome week 13 main slate, and talk about all the key takeaways from this past week in NFL DFS, and hopefully get you set for to have some fun once again next week. This is the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gdula. He is the senior managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, week 12 was pretty fun. It was kind of gross for a very long time. The afternoon slate did pick up, though. How you doing today?
I'm good, yeah. Week 12 started with the Thanksgiving slate.
That didn't happen. We're gonna ignore that. Never happened. What are you talking about?
What it feels like 2 weeks ago by this point because we got a lot of games to cover, and but yeah, I almost was like, oh yeah, that was the same week 12. But yeah, week 12 main slate fun. After a bit, I was really disengaged during the early.
I don't blame you.
The early slate. Spain was playing Germany. I was kind of had my. In the World Cup, I kind of had my eyes on that a little bit. Don't worry, I took lots of notes and I watched all the red zone. I just was making a joke about how bad the games were. But the Raiders and Seahawks game, like if you ever needed to be convinced, like to stack games,
yeah.
I'm not saying that everyone in that game was in the optimal lineup or anything, but
also Cardinals Chargers, same thing.
Like, yeah, so, you start off and a lot of the games are just not particularly good. You have like a Garrett Wilson who like has a good game, but, if you can just whenever a game does go over or has a lot of points like that and it's concentrated, like that's it's not a cheat code, but boy, whenever that stuff hits, it's like, this is why we stack. So
yeah, you just need to get fewer things right. If you nail a game that winds up either hitting a high total or going over a high total, like it just increases the odds that you're right and decreases the number of like one-off shots you're taking. And that's always a beneficial thing. Like Justin Herbert didn't light things up. And I sent like my 14th angry tweet about their stupid offense last night. He was still the perfect quarterback in the perfect lineup. Kyler Murray played well in that game. Keenan Allen was fine. Like, it was a decent game. James Conner had a really good game.
Wait, a running back had a good game against the Chargers?
And they're facing Josh Jacobs next week. What could go wrong? It was nice to have that back and forth. And I kind of wish that I had like leaned harder into that.
Yeah.
Because like, I think once we got to Sunday morning, I was pretty torn at quarterback. I was like, okay, Tua's got this big spread. I still liked him, but it was a big spread. Lamar's playing in wind for the 16,000th time.
Yeah.
You had wind in the Tampa Bay Cleveland game. Not that we were considering quarterbacks there, but like there were, Mahomes had the high spread too. So like, I probably should just go at like the two games. And I did. I think my highest exposure guys were in those two games, but I wish I had gone further with it, I guess. And I want to take that next week is like recommitting to game stacks, especially on a slate next week where we can actually do that and feel good about it.
Yeah. And I mean, that goes to like, sometimes we get questions on Twitter, how big should your core be or like what kind of contest should you play? And that's all dependent on you.
Yeah.
But for me, like over the past few years, I've really tried to narrow the player pool. I had a lot of, Antonio Gibson, so that was not ideal last week, but I had a lot of Samaje Perine, Rashad White. They didn't go nuts, but the salaries helped me get up to other guys. So like, I had like sort of balanced lineups that were okay. Could have been better if the stacks hit a little bit more, but you want to maximize. Like if you're playing tournaments and you're hoping to have huge weeks, you just want to maximize like the odds that whenever you do get things right, that you're benefiting from that. And if you just play if you play 10 quarterbacks over 10 lineups, the odds that you're going to have, a fantastic like 0.1% lineup for the week, they just go down.
Yeah. Adam Levitan of Established the Run says, what do you win when you win? And that kind of goes into that. You want to be right when you're right. And I think that's a key thing to keep in mind. And we'll talk about that process overall pretty often, but that kind of, I think, is nice vindication for that. We're going to break down what happened in week 12 and all that in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, because twice weekly NFL shows continuing as we roll along here. We got NBA with the Daily ISO and Tom Vecchio every weekday as well. A lot of good stuff all right here in the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Make sure you're subscribed in your podcast platform of choice by searching for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, and also the NFL shows live on the FanDuel YouTube page as well. So hit subscribe there, hit the like button if you're watching. We appreciate all of you. And check out those 10 a.m. Eastern on Monday and Thursday. Also, talking about the Week 13 main slate, well, the Sunday Million is now posted over on FanDuel. Just go to the FanDuel lobby and check out the NFL Sunday Million. $1.25 million in total prizes, $250,000 to first place. Just a $5 entry to get yourself a chance at the $250K and the $1.25 million in total prizes. It's going to be a really fun main slate, so go check that out by going to the FanDuel.com, the FanDuel lobby, or download the FanDuel app. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's start things off here by talking about Josh Jacobs. Now, typically, we don't dive into production for the headliner, but when a guy goes for 303 yards from scrimmage, I'm okay bending the rules a bit. That's fine with me. Jacobs, 303 yards from scrimmage. He has now had 150 or more yards from scrimmage 5 times this year. How sick is that? So I think the way I want to frame this is, let's put every running back in a neutral situation, at home, let's say 3-point favorites. Just put them in a neutral situation. Is Josh Jacobs now the RB1 for DFS?
Maybe. I'm trying to think of who else.
So I think that Saquon's up there.
Yeah.
McCaffrey is consideration, but he's kind of banged up. Depends on Eli Mitchell's outlook with health. JT could be in that discussion as well.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler is in that discussion.
I was going to say Eckler.
Given the passing game work, given the red zone role he's had recently. I think my pitch for Jacobs above Eckler specifically is the yardage, because again, 150 or more yards from scrimmage for Jacobs 5 times this year. That's happened 30 times by any running back in the NFL this year. 30 times. Josh Jacobs has whatever 5 divided by 30 is, 17%, I think. Yes, on the fly math, and I got it right. Okay. 17% of all games with 150 plus yards from scrimmage have been done by Josh Jacobs so far this year. I feel like that's kind of hard to say. And Eckler has had that one time. So I think Jacobs is above Eckler.
Yeah.
I think Saquon, he's not as consistent because he's pretty dependent on big plays, which is fine. I like volatility. That's totally fine. But it does ding him a bit. JT, I would say probably a worse offense than Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, we don't love either offense specifically, but better offense.
I'm having a hard time not putting him first.
Yeah, he's probably first. The question is, in the past we've seen running backs who are, the number one be salaried at 10,000. I don't know if he's quite a 10,000 back for me. So the obvious, what we're going to do here is name that salary for Jacobs. I'm saying,
are we saying specifically for this Chargers game? Because that well,
against the Charger, is it a first time around matchup?
No, they played in week 1, so it was a while ago. I think it was week 1.
I'm going to say 96.
So he's 95.
Okay.
I think that's very appropriate, right? I agree with you where I have some reservations putting him at 10K because he does still lose some passing game work to Amir Abdullah.
Mm-hmm. And the 300 yards we can talk about. What was it? 86 of it came on the,
which means overtime. He had 200 before the 86.
Yes,
though.
That I'm not knocking.
Yeah.
But we're gonna look at the 300 and remember that. But I'm not knocking 200 yards from scrimmage.
And sure, it was an overtime too. You can add that in that caveat if you want.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
For sure.
But still, overall 33 carries, 7 targets. So he's losing some passing game work to Abdullah, but still 7 targets, over 51% of the routes. I'd say 96. And it's, boy, we have not really built around many running backs this year in that upper 9,000 range, or mid 9,000 range, I guess. So we're gonna find a lot about the salary scroll in terms of how playable Jacobs is.
Correct.
And even if it's hard to play him, I think we should make sure we get some.
I wholeheartedly agree. He's played 5 games, I believe, without Hunter Renfrow. I don't have the actual splits up right now, but I'm pretty sure I picked the right games. 5 games without Hunter Renfrow, 6, 6, 8, 4, and 7 targets. He's averaged 168.2 yards in scrimmage. He's had 3 of his 5 games with 150 plus yards in scrimmage have come in those games. Red zone role is fine. It's not like his strong spot is a red zone role, but like he can score multiple times as he has shown. So I feel like he's well worth 95, especially in that matchup. And especially in a game that, there are 3 games that kind of stand out for stacking next week. That's one of them. So I'm okay paying that personally. He's really fun. I'm happy for him too, because like it's his contract year. He's gonna get paid, and that's awesome.
Yeah, the Chargers, this is more of a Thursday note, but the Chargers allowing 1.63 yards over expectation per carry. Next worst is 1.13, so half a yard per carry.
How are you that bad? Like how?
I don't know.
James Conner dropped 140 on them yards in scrimmage. Like, what are we doing? What do we do? No disrespect to James Conner, but like he hasn't had a great year in that department. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's turn the page now and talk about some injuries here. Aaron Rodgers left Sunday night's game with a rib injury. He didn't return because apparently X-rays were inconclusive. Jordan Love came in and looked good, facing not a full prevent defense because that game was still like in play. But like, he looked pretty good. Rodgers has said that he wants to play if he's able to, and as long as the team has a mathematical chance at the playoffs. So Rodgers might play, but like if they go with Love, would that completely crush Aaron Jones and Christian Watson for you or no?
It would for me. They're going to be, they've been run heavy. They're going to be run heavy without, we can say all the Aaron Rodgers things we want, but less efficiency whenever they do pass. I guess maybe the claim you say is like it'll open things up for Aaron Jones a little bit more, but I don't really see it that way. I honestly, if Green Bay and Philly were on the main slate, I don't think I would have got to Aaron Jones. Wouldn't have been the best decision, but I would prefer the value backs to him. Watson, I don't know if there's enough passing volume in this offense for me to like prioritize these guys. So I guess I could say as bringbacks in a stack of a game that I absolutely love, but this team plays so slowly. I never watch an island game live. I always DVR it. The Packers are such a good team for that because it's two presses of the 15-second skip ahead, and I never missed a snap from the Packers because they only snap it with 5 seconds left on the play clock.
That's pretty funny. I think that they were kind of on thin ice for DFS viability to begin with, in part because of like the play clock stuff. Because like you watch Aaron Jones play and it looks easy. Yeah, like he picks up chunks like with no effort, and then you look at the final box score, it's like, oh, he had like 4 targets. Like, yeah, what? How did that happen? Like it always feels like he's doing better than he is because he's so efficient, he's so good, but the offense just like so low volume overall. And I think that like it'd take a while for salaries to come down. It's not like an anti-Jordan Love thing. It'd be fun if he's good. Yeah. But it's like it increases the range of outcomes, not in a good way.
And A.J. Dillon is not necessarily the guy that some people thought he might be this year.
Right.
But he can still get some work. And frankly, if they're playing without Aaron Rodgers, I would assume A.J. Dillon gets more, more touches to sort of, get some bunny rushes or targets. He also had 4 targets, same as Aaron Jones, which I like A.J. Dillon just fine, but those guys should never really have the same amount of targets.
Aaron Jones did have 2 deep targets though.
Ran very different route numbers, but just I think I couldn't play Jones.
I want to see them run the
Unless
Cowboys formation where they've been using Zeke as like a fullback at times. I want to see that with AJ Dillon at fullback. Like, imagine that. Be sick.
they did combine for over 100% of snaps, so I'm sure that
They've done that quite a bit this year. They're on the field together often, but not in like an I formation.
Yeah,
like fullback situation. That's what I want.
Because Aaron Jones can play out wide. My question to you though is, how low of a salary do you need for Aaron Jones against the Bears next week that you would consider him?
If we assume that Rodgers is out,
take that how you will.
I would probably need it to be like 72
without Rodgers.
Yeah,
and
maybe
what
even
about
a little bit lower. 74.
Okay, Aaron Jones 74.
Okay, well, that's not a priority to me. I think
Christian Watson 65.
That's fair, but not enough where I'm going to actively seek it out given the concerns around the offense.
And I will not be stacking that game.
Why? Can't imagine. Are you disrespecting Sorry, I can't call him that. Are you disrespecting Trevor Siemian? He got his nickname stripped yesterday because Trevor Lawrence went nuts. So Trevor Lawrence is now Tutty Trev, for the record.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know what the status of Fields is because it went from he could have been day to day or missed the season. So like I don't fully know.
His left arm might be amputated within the next week. We don't know. We'll keep tabs on that though. We'll see. The Packers, it's just they were on thin ice, and that doesn't make it any easier. Travis Etienne, speaking of touchdown Trevor Lawrence, suffered a foot injury for the Jags, never returned. He was on the sideline, which to me implies it's not broken, it seems, and it might not be serious, but the team, they were fine right at JaMychal Hasty. 79% snap rate in this game, 5 targets and 12 carries. It is worth noting they claimed Darrell Henderson off waivers last week. He wound up being inactive, but he could play. But Hasty had more burst, I think, than Henderson showed pre-release with the Rams. It does seem like Etienne could have returned if needed, maybe. And I don't know. And we play him next week, assuming health. But if we get no Etienne, would you use Hasty knowing that Henderson is likely to be active?
So
they get the Lions for context.
Yeah. I need a mea culpa on Antonio Gibson, which sort of parlays into this. Like because there have been very few, if any, superstar running backs. We've played a lot more value running backs than in years past on this show. And I think that's led to my willingness to accept an imperfect role, such as assuming that Antonio Gibson was just going to be a featured back.
Or at least the 1A, heavy 1A.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is just one of those spots where I could get out over my skis and say, like, they didn't activate Darrell Henderson. Hasty looked good. He's going to be able to do it even without Etienne. I don't know if that's the right play. Give me a salary for Hasty, assuming there's no Etienne. And therefore sort of assuming that Henderson plays.
But also assuming they're both of them facing the Lions. That's in there too.
Right.
So I'd probably bump Hasty up to like 66 for me.
I was thinking around 65
Yeah.
Without Etienne.
65 exactly.
Okay.
Like, I think he's showed some bursts this year. He's looked good. They showed confidence in that game. Henderson's, he was released for a reason.
It's just one of those, like,
would I currently put him in the cash game consideration on Monday? No.
Yeah.
I think that's how I feel about it. But
yeah, it's one of those where, like, we're going to have a lot of these throughout the end of the season with just more injuries where we got to assume one way or the other that this role is sticky or it's not. I'm not saying it's not sticky, but I don't want to assume that it is and say that he's a write down.
It's sticky in the bad way, I think. It's like, a little sticky situation over there. Elijah Mitchell exited in the third quarter with a knee injury for the 49ers. Didn't actually play a snap in the first quarter, but played a lot in the second quarter. Christian McCaffrey had some knee discomfort. He did play late in that game when they were trying to ice things out. So discomfort, but it wasn't like a re-injury, didn't seem like. Mitchell still had 7 carries on 15 snaps. Jordan Mason, 5 carries on 8 snaps to close out the game. Even without Mitchell, McCaffrey, with his knee discomfort, may not close out games. The snap rate should be higher than it has been if there's no Mitchell. So McCaffrey, not at full health right now, but may have one less legitimate threat to his workload. So What would a Mitchell injury do for your thoughts on McCaffrey in the short term?
It'd bump him up. We saw him go play 81% of the snaps in his second game with the team without Mitchell. But since Mitchell's been back, he hasn't been above 65%. He's just been, between 63 and 65%. I know that there was the discomfort this week that kept him off the field a bit more. But it's an imperfect role. And I know that he wasn't 100%. I know that they didn't really need him on the field, but to give Jordan Mason the ice the game carries is enough for me to balk at this situation. Yeah. McCaffrey also just in a, not the best offense, not an offense that's going to score 40 points a game, 30 points a game with relative ease. I think he's probably going to end up being oversalaried week over week for me. There's going to be a little bit of fear of missing out, but
sure,
I don't know if the true Christian McCaffrey eruption spots are going to be there anymore because he actually has viable teammates. So I think he's probably someone that I'd put in the 8,000 range, 81 maybe, and that's probably not going to ever reflect what his true salary is.
Yeah, I want to see what the injury report winds up looking like this week. If he sits a couple days with a knee injury or something like that, that's kind of concerning. Regarding the offense, you said they're not the most explosive offense. Part of that could be because Debo is also banged up. He went in with a hamstring injury. It seemed like he aggravated it during the game. He did come back in right away, but he's not healthy right now.
Yeah, he was limited all week. He was one of my loves for the show, and then didn't get.
He was questionable actually. He wasn't even off the injury report. So I think he's legit dealing with stuff. He's not going full speed. It doesn't seem like. So if McCaffrey practices in full all week, my concern will be decreased, but I still think I couldn't put a 9 in front of his salary with a straight face. Right. They are facing Miami next week. Pretty fun game there as well. McCaffrey, whoa, his salary's down to 82.
Yeah, that's about where I had it.
That's low enough where it makes you think about it at least, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it definitely does. I did some study on pivots, and guys in that range can often be overstated with how good their role is. I think that's one of the spots where, I think this one depends a lot on the practice report, because we did see him play over 80% of snaps in a game. Yeah. We've seen that scaled back since Mitchell's return. It's clear this team wants to get Elijah Mitchell involved.
Which is fair. He's good. Yeah,
he is good. Yeah. So I think we can really only wait until Thursday and get a little bit more information.
Yeah. If he's full practice Wednesday, my confidence will go up about 30%, I would say. Darnell Mooney left with an ankle injury for the Bears and didn't return. Sounds like there's a good chance he misses the rest of the year. Cole Kmet led the team with 6 targets on 25 throws. Chase Claypool also went to the injury tent at one point, but he ran 20 routes that Kmet at 25. We don't go at this passing offense often, ever. Would removing Mooney from it entice you on Kmet or Claypool, assuming we get Justin Fields back at some point?
No. Let me. Mooney has averaged. I'll remove this game from it. He's averaged 5.5 targets per game. Yeah. Which guy here is getting more than that? And who's getting bumped up to 8 or 9 targets? There's not enough to go around. So, and
also Fields has been great, but his passing efficiency has not been. So the value of those targets isn't that high either. Yeah. So it would. I
don't really see this as this isn't someone stepping into a huge opportunity.
I agree. Michael Carter suffered an ankle injury, was ruled out in the second half. Sounds like it's a sprain, but they weren't sure of the severity. Zonovan Knight, who apparently has a nickname of Bam Knight, which is pretty fun, wound up. What's that?
He was hard to deal with.
Because he was listed as Bam or Zonovan. Yeah. Spreadsheet ruiner, Zonovan Knight, 49% snap rate. He converted with 103 yards in scrimmage. So that's pretty fun. Ty Johnson had a long touchdown, but just a 25% snap rate. And it wasn't just garbage time either, because Knight played quite a bit even before the Carter injury. James Robinson was inactive, but they said they wanted to see if Knight could give them a spark, and he kind of did. So that's worth something. So let's say Carter misses next week. would you have interest in Bam Knight, or would the likelihood of a committee scare you off?
Yeah, one of those spots where there's enough of a committee. What'd you say the snap rate was? Like 49%?
Yeah.
Does that go, how much does that go up?
I would put a cap at 60.
I was gonna say, like, what's a 60% snap rate worth in this offense? Not a lot. They play the Vikings next week, low total, 43.5.
I did bet the Jets money line already.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that it's going to be because of a big game
because
from
of
Knight.
defense, yeah.
So
He's
probably
58.
Oh, I think the models will love him.
Yeah. So I think about it this way. Like, his competition for rushing attempts in this game was Michael Carter and Ty Johnson. Clearly, the Jets think that Michael Carter's better than James Robinson. So I think the 60% snap rate, that's probably where I'd keep it, but maybe there's room for upward expansion there because he did play well too.
Just 7 routes.
3 targets and 7 routes, yeah. So the 3 targets is probably high.
Probably. I feel like
he'd be worth.
What are the odds he literally? I mean,
all I'm saying is he's worth thinking about. I don't think he'd be worth playing. My assumption right now is he would not be worth playing, but I think he's worth thinking about at least.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Maybe we find out that there's absolutely no value elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that we need, like, I don't know, we haven't looked at the main slate fully, but receivers, tight ends, maybe they're all on the slate and we need to get there, but
right. He's not worth crossing off, but probably not going to be a place I'll go to.
Yeah.
Patriots had a couple injuries on Thursday. Jacoby Myers had a shoulder injury, did come back at one point, but Damian Harris had a thigh injury and was apparently on crutches. Myers left in the first half. Devontae Parker led the team in routes, but Nelson Aguilar had 8 targets. Only Ramondre Stevenson with 10 had more because Ramondre is their wide receiver 1. Harris's final snap came in the third quarter, but didn't actually log a second quarter snap. So Ramondre is running ahead of him even before he was officially ruled out. In the end, Stevenson, 82% snap rate, led the team in targets, just 7 carries in a pass heavy script, which was smart against that defense. Stevenson without Harris has had like a legit role despite his offense. So before we talk about the pass catchers, they're playing Thursday, so we won't be able to check the salary, but name that salary on Stevenson without Harris, given how much passing game work he's been getting recently.
I would probably put him in like the 84 range, which I think captures the opportunity, but also caps it a bit based on how I view this offense.
100% agree. I was going to say 85. I think that's spot on. Very good back, very good role. We want to actively seek out pass catchers in the backfield. He gets us that. Not going to lose a lot of work. He gets high leverage work. He's also a good football player, which is worth something.
Yeah.
So I'd agree with that for sure on Ramondre if there's no Damian. And I think they'll probably be able to run the Bills Thursday. So, that could be a good spot for Ramondre. What about the pass catchers here? I mean, Myers probably going to play through it. It sounds like he could come back in, but like, would even taking him out entice you for any of the pass catchers? Because I don't think I'd care too much.
I wouldn't care much if it was a main slate. I know like Hunter Henry almost had, 2 touchdowns, but just the 5 targets, they just like spread around bad targets.
Yeah.
You can do better on a main slate.
I agree.
Single game slate's different, but main slate.
So thumbs up for Ramondre, thumbs down for everybody else. Let's dive into the role changes and talk about some running backs who filled in for guys who were out this past week. Rachaad White, legitimate featured back in Tampa Bay with no Lenny Fournette. 91% snap rate for Rachaad White. 14 carries and 9 targets. The route rate was 74%. Now, Fournette did practice all week. Was ruled out Saturday. I think that probably implies he's going to be back. They play Monday upcoming. But what's your view of Rachaad White? If we assume Lenny is back, given that White looked okay in this game.
Yeah, it'd probably be like sort of like an early season Fournette. I think maybe their roles just swap around.
Sure.
There was a quote from this team that was basically like we've been working on getting Rachaad White up to the level where he can just like handle the load, and he's there now. That's not something you come out and say. I mean, you could say that because they knew that Fournette wasn't going to be relevant this week, but I also don't think that you come out and say, we want our backup running back to lead this team, and then just give it back to Leonard Fournette. So I would say that it's probably, we had Fournette in like the mid 7,000 range once the dust settled, and we realized that he wasn't going to be 90% snap rate Lenny all season. I'd probably go like 76 for White, because I still think that Fournette would mix in about 35% of the snaps and maybe still some high leverage stuff there here and there.
I'd probably be closer to like 73 because this offense sucks.
That's fair.
And Tristan Wirfs got carted off, their right tackle, one of the few good offensive line they have left. I would lower it. It's not because of him, and not because of the way I expect the split to break down with Lenny. It's because of the offense. So I think we're on board with the expected role. I'm just lower on this offense.
So we had Aaron Jones in this range. Like, would you rather play Aaron Jones or Rachaad White?
With Rodgers or no?
We'll say with Rodgers.
I'd rather play Aaron Jones.
And then
because he'll be efficient on his touches, I know.
Okay.
With Love, I'd probably go Rachaad White because Tom Brady's better than Jordan Love.
Okay.
I know we Jordan Love played well, but I think I can say with a decent amount of confidence that Tom Brady's probably better.
Yeah.
So we're about on the same page there. Samaje Perine, really nice role with no Joe Mixon, 80% snap rates. He had 17 of 19 running back carries and 7 targets, which is a 19% share. Perine had 3 out of 4 red zone opportunities. They were like 3 kneel downs, so I count for that if you're looking at those numbers. We're not rostering Perine if Joe Mixon is back, but Mixon was ruled out early this week, didn't practice at all, I don't believe. So where are you at Perine after this week if Mixon were to miss again? And if Mixon returns, are you going to lower your expectations for him, given that Perine has played decently well this year?
I think the big thing here is, look, no Mixon, we play Perine.
Yeah.
But if Mixon comes back for this Chiefs game, I don't know if he's like true Joe Mixon, because Perine has been able to do some stuff with his opportunities. He looks good, when he gets the ball. I think this would probably just hurt my interest in Mixon. I feel like it's kind of simple. Play Perine if Mixon's out, lower myself on Mixon even when he does come back.
I don't think I'll lower him too much because Perine's played well all year, and they still have been giving Joe Mixon a lot of work. Like, he had that Jets game. Perine like closed it out and looked good, and then they still went back to Joe Mixon. I think it was a Thursday night game right after that. So I'd probably still be high in Mixon. The one thing that gives me pause is actually the same game. Juju Smith-Schuster came off a concussion this week for the Chiefs and didn't play a full role. So like, that's within the range of outcomes.
Yeah.
Mixon's salary is 85. That's high.
Yeah.
Worth it, but high. It would lower me on him a bit, but I don't want to cross him off. Like, I'd still get to Mixon in game stacks.
Yes. I'm saying we're basically saying the same thing. It's coming off the concussion. That's really what worries me.
Yeah, I agree.
It's if Perine was horrible and they didn't have a solution, I'd say like, well, he's just going to get as much as he can handle. But I don't think that this team is dumb enough to do that to Joe Mixon.
And also, like, I can't even use my crutch of like, well, he's full in practice, because Juju was full on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So like, everything is case by case, but like that was noteworthy to me. Perine's salary is 71. So if we get no Joe Mixon, I would be close to lock buttoning Samaje Perine this week.
In that game, yeah.
I agree. Okay. Marquise Brown came back with a nice role for the Cardinals, led them in targets and routes run. 8 targets on 29 routes, just 46 yards, so not super productive. He had 2 out of 3 red zone targets, and despite the lack of yardage, did have an 11.1 yard 8 out, which is pretty good. So even with DeAndre Hopkins getting a 22% target share, Brown had a 30% share. Hopkins did lead with 4 deep targets compared to 2 for Brown. So Hopkins' role still wasn't bad, but I think it's nowhere that Marquise Brown's role was good. How would you value those two with Kyler Murray going forward? They are in a bye this week, and Rondale Moore / Greg Dortch might be back, but I still feel like these guys will probably get a lot of targets.
Yeah, I think Brown's going to be heavily targeted. I don't think that by any means he would have more targets than Hopkins. I don't think that
Right.
that's really. It's just that this wasn't like, Hopkins weirdly had a 10%, 12% target share, and like they just had to funnel things toward Brown. Hopkins still involved, but Brown even more involved. So the problem for me is this offense is so easy to trust, and it probably shouldn't be. But that Hopkins will be the main target getter, week after week. Like if you had to put odds on, Hopkins to lead this team in targets, it's pretty heavy. But also Marquise Brown had a 7,000 salary already. I think it was 7,000 for this week. I don't know how much that'll go down. I guess maybe a little bit because the yardage wasn't there, but I feel like we're never going to get it. What's that?
I played a lot in that 7,000. Yeah. I felt pretty bad about it.
I don't know. I don't know if that's going to go down. Mm-hmm. And if you put Brown at like 75 and Hopkins at like 85, I'm not saying they're bad plays, but they're going to be hard to prioritize whenever this offense is always a bit of a trap.
I just had the depressing thought that it's like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett with worse quarterback play. And I was like, that feels bad.
I don't want to say that, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that I might be a little bit higher on Marquise Brown. The yardage wasn't there, but I think these guys have a chance to both have 25% target share, which is a lot.
Oh, yeah. But I do think it's like a Lockett Metcalf situation.
Yeah.
But I'm saying
the value of the offense hurts it for you.
Yeah, like
75 would be kind of high. I can get behind that. Yeah.
And I could see it being the case. Hopkins isn't going to go really below 8,000. And
nor should he. Yeah.
Right. So
okay. Zeke Elliott's snap rate went back up in week 12. He played on 52% of the Cowboys snaps against the Giants on Thanksgiving. Played just 30% in his first game back, though part of that was because of the blowout. Tony Pollard still had more carries than Zeke, 18 to 16. But he played only 3 more snaps. Elliott had 2 out of 8 red zone chances. Pollard didn't have any, or he had 1, I should say. We're still unlikely to play Zeke by himself. I did on Thanksgiving in my only good lineup. But this is not Thanksgiving typically. So how you viewing Tony Pollard, seeing what the role Zeke had on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we talked about Zeke on Thanksgiving, and I said I would assume that this team wants to get him like a touchdown, and he got a little bit more than that in a pretty good rushing matchup.
Yeah.
He looked good.
Yeah, he did.
And
he looked good against the Vikings too, I thought.
Yeah. Because guess what? He's actually pretty good. He was when he's not completely
Tony Pollard's
hurt.
Better, but Zeke Elliott is not terrible.
Yeah, it feels really bad that Twitter hates Zeke because they love Pollard.
Yeah.
And therefore overlook the fact that Zeke's still good for what he should be.
It's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this is just a spot where I'm not going to play Elliott on a main slate, but I'm also probably not playing Pollard on a main slate because I don't know if his salary is ever going to dip back down to So let me clarify there. I will play Pollard at the right salary in games that I want to stack, but Pollard is probably not going to be a one-off type of play for me.
I'm keeping the Aaron Jones comp, and I've used Aaron Jones outside of games that I want to stack. So I'm good at that.
How much did you enjoy? I don't know. They're on the main slate anyway, so that helps. It's a bit of a cop out for me. So
yeah, I mean it depends on the salary always, but
wait, did we get the?
I know it's the Colts in 2 out of 3 Island games, but that means we get Chiefs Bengals on the main slate. Don't complain. Don't let them hear you complaining. I thought about this before and I was like, oh no, and I was like, oh, actually,
well, yeah, I guess. Plus, when I DVR through that Sunday night game, I don't have to really pay attention to the first half because
I think the Colts should also be on every island slate to keep them off the main slate. So just keep the Colts on an island at all times. I'll use JT in single game. That'll be fine.
The Colts should be like a MAC team or something and just play every Thursday night football game.
Wednesday. Put them on a Wednesday. Maction. Put them on a Wednesday. I think that's I'm in favor of that. I think that Pollard is in this role is 78 or so. I think that's probably around. It's probably lower than where he'll be. But
yeah, I think that's where I'm coming from. Is
his ceiling's better than that, but that's okay. Not everything is ceiling, despite my attempts to make everything about ceiling. I know. In their first full game without CEH, Isaiah Pacheco's role was pretty nice. You you're calling him Lego Pacheco, which I think is good, like Lego My Ego, right? Is that that's
no,
reference to
no?
that?
It's like instead of like gimme Pacheco, it should be like at least make it try to rhyme if you have like a bit of an option.
No, I thought it was a Lego My Ego reference.
Well, I mean, there's that too, but I don't really.
I'm going Lego My Ego, Lego Pacheco. 22 carries and 1 target on a
Well, now it sounds like he's
54%.
like a Lego version of Isaiah Pacheco, which would also be cool.
I'd take that. Yeah, I'd happily put that on my desk. I'd put any Lego on my desk. The Legos are sick. 54% snap rate for Pacheco, 48% of the red zone chances. I went the rate there because he had like 12 red zone opportunities because they couldn't score in the red zone. My God, and they still covered. Yeah. The Rams are so bad. This is an ideal script for Pacheco, where they were up the whole time, game never really in doubt. He did just get 86 yards. So these caveats are important. Ronald Jones was involved as well. So lots of caveats, lots of good, some bad. Did this game alter your view of Pacheco at all?
I don't think so. I think he's still someone whose snap rate is not going to tell the whole story for me because he's going to get carries whenever he's out there. That's what he's there to do. But is also very prone to being just taken. I know we had 12 red zone carries, but this team wants to use Jerick McKinnon in the red zone whenever they're trying to pass or just in general. I think that there's an inherent cap on Pacheco, and your best case scenario is you're going to yell at me for this maybe, but like it feels almost like a Nick Chubb thing where unless he turns his 20 carries into like 150 yards and a touchdown or two. Now the salaries are very different.
Are you saying he should be 96 like Nick Chubb is next week?
and Nick Chubb is the best running back in football. But I just feel like there's only one way for Pacheco really to hurt us.
That's not a bad comp, honestly.
But
like, he's like a downgraded version of Nick Chubb. Like the downsides of Nick Chubb apply to Pacheco as well. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, like value Nick Chubb, basically.
Yeah. So in the 3 games with CEH either out or minimally involved, 82 yards in scrimmage, 107 and 86. That's not terrible. Like I said, the 12 red zone chances this week. So what's 15 divided by, what did I select? 15 divided by 40 is like 30-something%, 38%. So 38% red zone share in those 3 games. Is he in play for game stacks for Bengals Chiefs next week? I think he is. He's not like a priority target. I probably don't want to get there as like a standalone play, but like I think he's in play for game stacks at least.
It depends on the salary. He's 7,000.
Why?
That seems a bit high for someone.
He's at 63.
Right, like
who do we 7,000?
7,000's a lot.
Who do I need to bribe? Push him down.
I'm not saying he can't be great at 7,000, but he's got to score twice.
Yeah,
which he can do. And then in that case, what?
I mean, I do think it's within the range of outcomes for him to bust off a long run. In which case, the yardage upside could get him there. Yeah. Like he could go for 120 and a touchdown, and if he has a couple catches, like that's getting you to 20. You'd rather have more than 20 at 7,000, but like that makes it more fringy for game stacks than definitive for game stacks for me. It's a little high.
But game stacks only not a consideration in anything without like a game stack. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't be tempted by him in outside of game stack.
I agree. We alluded to this earlier, but Juju Smith-Schuster's role was limited off his concussion. He ran just 19 routes, which was 13 fewer than Travis Kelce, Justin Watson, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Earned 3 targets on those 19 routes. Sky Moore, 6 targets on just 14 routes. So we want to go hard at that Bengals-Chiefs game next week, but Juju's role was, how will you view the non-Kelce pieces of this passing game next week if we assume Kadarius Toney remains out?
I need to know how good the other games are on the slate.
I mean, there are 3 really good games because we have Lions, Jags, and Chargers, Raiders.
Okay, so this isn't the only game to stack, but Well, okay. Give me a salary for Juju because he was 60. Salary 66 this week. If it goes down because he didn't do anything, I don't know if it's going to go down though. I would assume it kind of goes up just because he's back. But give me a
65?
salary and we'll
I thought
go
it was a
from
little
there.
low at 66 this week. And
Yeah.
I used him. I would say bring it down a bit, but up it for the game. So 65.
Okay, so I was gonna say like 68, just assuming that we know that Juju should be more than what he was this week. He's 69, which I think is fair.
Depending on how, if the 6,000 range is as bad as it was this week, I'll probably get there, but by default and not by seeking it out.
Yeah. The other guys, I don't quite know if there's going to be enough for any of them, even at low salaries, really to.
Like, Watson doesn't earn targets, MVS doesn't earn targets. Sky Moore does, but I don't know what his snap rate will be if Juju's more full.
I mean, he's kind of like an Adrian Peterson-esque guy where the snap rate's not going to be good, but when he's out there, they're going to try to give him the ball.
Isaiah Pacheco is Nick Chubb, and Sky Moore is Adrian Peterson. He wears the running back number, so it actually makes sense.
Yeah. I will say, as someone heavily invested in Sky Moore being relevant, it does seem like a few plays that might have been drawn up for him got blown dead. So maybe he had a little bit more work. I would not be surprised if he gets some rushing attempts or something as well. Sure. So, but it's really, even if in the low 5,000 range, these are not guys that you build around heavily.
Yeah.
On like the 4 p.m. only slate, sure. On the
could you get
slate,
this guy more in a game stack on the main slate or no?
What's his salary?
He is 53.
53. Probably not.
Probably not, but it's not definitive not. Like probably not, like how bad is value this week?
That's something we'll find out with the salary scroll. But also it's important just to remember, like, what do you think the best yardage and touchdown upside is for Sky Moore?
7 targets, 80 yards, and a touchdown, which is lower than my checklist of 85 or 2 tuds.
Which is decent, especially at 5,300. Sure. It's not even 6,300, but the odds he goes for like 120 yards and a touchdown or two, like, seems very minimal. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, you're opening up salary for other positions, but you're also kind of accepting a sub 15 point output.
And I don't want that to be a definitive, personally, if I can avoid it. So we'll talk more about them Thursday. I know I can say that right now, but it's
we know which 3 games we're gonna be talking about in the bookmaker section.
Yeah, buddy. Keep the wins low, please. Latavius Murray had a really good role on a really bad team after the team cut Melvin Gordon. Latavius 83% snap rates. What did that get you? 93% in the first half. He handled 13 of 15 running back carries. He had just 1 target, but did run 25 routes. So there's that. 66% route rate. Mike Boone, eligible to return from injury reserve next week. So possible there's more competition here. But when you consider this offense, but also consider a decent role, what's that worth to you?
That's tough. It's a revenge game next week against the Ravens. So we've got to multiply that.
I can't remember. Like, he's played, how many plays has he played for? My gosh.
Like 5. Raiders, Vikings, Saints, Ravens, and he's on his 15 with the Broncos.
Okay. It seems like it's higher.
Yeah, I mean, that totals 38.5, and Denver's a 7.5 point underdog. So, I mean, I don't even need to know.
I just want Lamar in a freaking fun game for once. I hate the schedule. It's so stupid.
I don't need to calculate what Denver's implied team total is, because I know it's 14 points, and I would bet the under, because this team just is the worst offense I've ever seen in my life. That role within this offense, not worth a whole lot. I'd say, like, I think he was 62 this week,
and I didn't use any of them.
I'd maybe, I mean, like, now Mike Boone's might come back.
Well, let's assume Mike Boone's not back, just for funsies.
Right. Okay. 83% snap rate. I'd bump him up to 63.
Sure.
Because he's locked into that. I mean, he did have a long carry, so
hey, look fine.
That's at least something.
Yeah.
I don't really think it's his fault. He kind of seems
it's not his
playing
fault.
Well, but
I like Latavius. He seems like a cool guy. He's from like near Syracuse. I lived in Syracuse for a while. So like, I'm pro. He played for the Vikings. I'm pro Latavius. I just, I can't root for this offense. I don't hate myself enough for that anymore. Like I've been trying to practice self-love and not bet the Broncos. So, and not put money on the line. So try to avoid that. He's 64.
Okay.
Just me. In that game, I think I can just cross him off.
Yeah.
In a pretty neutral game script, Brian Robinson led the Commanders' backfield after Antonio Gibson was the guy in a positive script last week, because sure, why not? Robinson, 18 carries for 105 yards, 3 targets, which was probably 16 times more than he had his career up to that point on 6 routes. Gibson, 9 carries, 3 targets on 14 routes. In total, Robinson played half the snaps, Gibson 40%. So someone might lead this backfield. We don't know who. Can't really predict what script they'll be used in. Can we just cross them off?
Yeah, so the 2022 running back situation across the entire position led me to think that I could trust Antonio Gibson a bit more than I should have. This is the exact kind of thing in years past where we'd be like, there's too much to get wrong and not enough to get right here. They did not do enough against Atlanta, so I'm out. I mean, I guess it's a decent matchup against the Giants, but
do we care? So
Gibson, 61, Big Hat Robinson, 66.
Yeah, where are our hats? I guess I've got if I just hold this up to the camera, does it look? We can just look big,
Well, if I knew he had big hats to promote after the game,
if I just sit it on top of my head, it looks kind of big. Oh, it kind of shows off how big my forehead is, and I'm uncomfortable with that. So we'll just we'll work at.
Well, yeah.
Will FanDuel expense a hat? It's $75 apparently. Would they expense a $75 hat for us for the stream or no?
I don't want it.
I'll take it. I don't care if you want it. I wasn't asking you.
You can have both then.
I can't get a Commander's hat, but I can't justify wearing that. But if it's something else, I'll wear it. So
yeah, cross them off.
Okay, cool. Isaiah McKenzie popped up for a nice roll on Thanksgiving. Good thing I missed that. McKenzie, 10 targets and 2 carries while running 80% routes. Stephon Diggs was still the top guy with 15 targets. Gabe Davis had 5 targets. The 6 red zone targets split evenly between Diggs and McKenzie. So 10 targets for McKenzie, 3 in the red zone, 2 carries, which is noteworthy. So how confident are you in using McKenzie now? And does this lower your view of Gabe the Babe?
I think it does lower me on Gabe. I kind of tracked him a bit and saw that the raw targets were up, which is always I know the market share, I know the potential on those targets is great. Now that it's maybe back down, and for a good reason with McKenzie, because McKenzie's actually good at football. I would be lower on him if they were on the main slate. Thankfully, we'll get another week on Thursday night to see, how they utilize these guys, but it would lower me on Gabe. I think I would be very open to McKenzie, assuming he's in the low 6,000 range within a game that I want to stack, because the Bills are hard to stack to begin with, just because we want to play Allen, but then Diggs' salary is always crazy high.
So I would be McKenzie in the high 5,000 range for me.
Isn't he always lingering in 61 to begin with?
No, he was 53 on Thanksgiving.
Well, Thanksgiving's a different slate.
No, but I think he's been down there anyway, because his snap rate's been 47%. His role's been really bad. I have him in a dynasty league, and I've been tracking McKenzie a lot, and he's been unusable for the most part. So I need him to be in the high 5s personally, because there's still a risk that he loses some snaps at some point.
Okay, so he got up to 61 and 6,000 in weeks 4 and 6, and then he's been lower than that. Yeah, I think I was still, because I don't ever look at him.
Yeah.
I think I just probably thought he was up around there. So he'd probably be upper 5s. Sure, I'd play him.
I think it lowers Gabe as a standalone play, but I'd still love Gabe for game stacks, because he has that ceiling is still well within his range of outcomes, and I'm okay chasing that. It might burn me a lot of times, but when it pays off, it pays off.
Yeah.
He can win a slate by himself. So I'm okay chasing that personally. So it does lower me as a standalone play. I had a lot of Gabe on Thanksgiving. It if I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have been as heavy. But if I had known, what the forever caveat. It does let me bid on Gabe, but I still like him for game stacks.
I think we're on the same page here.
Okay. In their first game with Keenan Allen and Gerald Everett, but without Mike Williams, Austin Eckler led the Chargers in targets because sure, why not? You got a freakazoid quarterback. Let's dump it off. 15 targets for Austin Eckler, 10 for DeAndre Carter. Keenan and Josh Palmer both had 7. I like Keenan a lot. This game does not alter that for me, but this offense refuses to throw downfield, and it drives me absolutely insane. Where are you on this passing offense for the Chargers?
Still like Keenan. I think I need to bump up Eckler a good amount. He had 6 targets in the first half. So obviously the 9 in the second half, but I was looking at 7 in the fourth quarter. So a bit misleading. He had a lot of those dump offs in the fourth quarter. But yeah, I'm good with Keenan. I think that, in the past, whenever Keenan Allen's healthy, he's kind of underrated with how good he is for fantasy. I think people maybe view him more as like a better real life performer just because he's not like a high ADOT, like making, downfield catches kind of guy, but
it's a technician.
Yeah. So I still like Keenan. I feel good with Herbert. I think he's getting healthier, rolling out of the pocket, making some plays on his own. And as much as I don't love it for the ADOT for Herbert, dumping it off to Eckler, who can, get some yards after the catch underneath.
Yeah. There are worse dump off options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really no change. I think that there's probably a temptation to bump up Eckler after 15 targets, but I don't think that's really indicative of, how they're hoping to use him long term. Like to give him, if it was, you'd have got more targets in the first half.
Like it's totally flipped when it was earlier this year because his red zone role is sick. He had a stretch of so last year Aaron Jones led the league with 17 red zone targets among running backs. Eckler has 19 this year already after yesterday. So his red zone role is awesome, but the yardage upside sucks for a guy in the 9,000 range. He's had 71, 63, 180 his past 4 games. He has topped 130 once this year. He has topped 100, exceeded 100 only 3 times. So his workload is good, but he's not doing a lot with it. Now, he could always do that. He could always get the yardage. We saw it with Mixon. Past lack of yardage is not indicative of future lack of yardage. He did have 199 in one game. So and he could get 3 touchdowns on top of 199 yards, but it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Name a salary for Keenan quick.
76.
Yeah, probably around there. 77. That's fine. Against the Raiders.
Also, and also I'd say Arizona second in ADOT allowed. So that plays into it a little bit. They get the Raiders next week though. They're still 5th, which is unfortunate.
The 5th lowest?
5th lowest ADOT allowed.
But they get torched anyway.
Yes, but it's not simply due to the deep ball.
So it's actually a perfect mesh for the Chargers. They stink and don't let deep balls. That's where the Chargers live, baby.
Yeah.
Line of scrimmage, no deeper. You know? Any interest in DeAndre Carter? Because I can't get there.
Probably not.
Okay, cool. 62. He has not had more than 73 yards this year. The 73 was on the 10 targets this week. I will pass. Palmer's salary was 68. It's down to 66. I'd rather use him than Carter by a wide margin.
Yes.
Cordero Patterson's role expanded a bit more this week. 58% snap rate, his highest since his injury. He had 11 carries and 5 targets, which is 21 adjusted opportunities, which is carries plus 2x targets. That's his most there since week 1. His 73 yards, but his most since week 3. He had 4 out of 7 red zone chances. So we know this is a good running team. Patterson's role potentially expanding, but Tyler Algier is good at football and will not go away. Nor should he. He should keep getting work. He's good. Are you willing to give Patterson a swipe given the slight expansion?
So I was going to say no.
Okay.
But then I did see his salary.
Oh, no.
So give me a salary for Patterson.
What
this will tell us a lot. They play Pittsburgh, which would be
actually not bad. So I'll say it's 60, slight expansion, 55% snap rate because Algier's good. 55% snap rate, 20 adjusted opportunities, good red zone role, good rushing offense. I would probably put him around 62.
Okay, he's 64.
Okay, that's fair.
So, I mean, he's not living in the range that he has been in the past.
We'd put Patterson above Zonovan Knight, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. 64 is fine. It's not great, but it's fine.
It's not a write down. I won't stack that game, so maybe I won't even get there. But
Yeah.
I would play Patterson in a one-off just because he has multiple touchdown upside, just based on how good his high leverage work can be.
If we're starved for value, I can see that. So he's in the consideration set, is what I would say. That's like good enough to be, worth thinking about for sure. They kind of squeezed out Caleb Huntley this week. He had a nice little run, but not a lot of work there. So that's supposed to be interesting at least. Gus Edwards returned from his hamstring injury and had a very typical Ravens running back game. 52% snap rate, 52 yards. He had 6 of 18 red zone chances, just 1 target on 9 routes. So with this team, we know the passing game work will be limited for a running back. So any interest in Gus Edwards for the Ravens?
No, not really, especially not in that game next week. Yeah. Definitely will be stacking that one. There's always a capped upside for Ravens running backs. I'd say like 65, but I'm probably not going to get there myself.
67, so that's fine. I think we can just kind of say like, yeah, he could get us 100 yards maybe by touchdown, but he's not going to get passing game work. So it's like a max of 16 points. I need a bit more than that for 67 personally. We put Pacheco above Gus, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. The Giants spread the ball around in their first game without Wan'Dale Robinson, or first re-game without Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. Richie James, Darius Slayton, and Saquon Barkley each had 6 targets. Isaiah Hodgins had 4. Nobody else had more than 2. James led in routes run despite having a knee injury coming in. So that's noteworthy, I would say. So James probably the biggest beneficiary alongside Slayton. Is Richie James on your radar, or is it just Slayton because he gets the deep work?
I want to say it's just Slayton.
That was a leading question on my end, by the way.
Just Slayton. They play Washington next week.
Ugh. Bad game.
Give me a salary on Slayton.
So he was 64. That was kind of high. I was using that obligation because that's Slate.
Yeah.
His workload is now Mooney-esque. I'd say it's 6,000.
He's 62.
Like, I like him as a player. I just don't like the passing volume.
Curtis Samuel 6,000. I might just prefer Curtis Samuel in the. Well, maybe not. He got blanked in targets. Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Slayton.
Personally. Yeah, I'd go Slayton. Never mind.
Despite
Richie James 56. I don't think I'd get there.
No, probably not. Despite my adoration of red zone rushing attempts, I don't think I can get to Samuel at 6,000 in that game.
That offense is.
Rough. All right. So lost internet there for a second, but we are now back. We'll try to get Brandon back in here in 2 seconds. And there you are. So my internet went out. My power has been browning out for the past day or so. So we got around that. We're back and cooking.
Yeah.
I was asking myself about Darrell Henderson and the Rams. Maybe this was nature's way of saying don't talk about the Rams. I said you could skip ahead 15 seconds. And nature's like, cool, we'll do. Thanks.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Aaron Williams, 70% snap rate against the Chiefs, 11 carries, 3 targets, 60 yards. The team scored 10 points because they stink. I feel like we should probably game plan around this team not having Matthew Stafford because it sounds like he still is losing feeling in his legs. So any interest in Kyron or no?
I mean, you could make a case that next week's matchup against the Seahawks is somewhat similar. Where they should play from behind and get him some receiving work, but had that this week and had 7.5 FanDuel points. So I don't really think that I'm going to get there, even if I'm trying to stack up Seattle.
I agree with that. Okay, let's go into situations to monitor. What else do you know from this week?
Miles Sanders ran all over the Packers, 143 yards, 2 touchdowns on 21 carries. So it might seem like a role increase, but I don't think the role really changed. That game was actually close throughout. Despite it was a 13-0 lead within 8 seconds. It's wild. Snap rate still just 54%, so it wasn't just positive script and the game getting out of hand, anything like that. We actually saw a similar game from him back against the Jaguars when he had 27 carries, 134 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and that didn't lead to a huge role increase. So I'm not really changing how I view Sanders. I think it was just a great outcome on his workload. He's really good. He looks good when he has the ball, but I'm not really revamping my view on Miles Sanders. Alvin Kamara, not someone I want to roster at all, ever. 66% snap rate with Mark Ingram back. He played 30%. Last week, they gave David Johnson 18% of the snaps. I don't know what the situation is, but it's clear for one reason or another that they don't want to give Kamara a huge workload that we've seen from him early in the season when he was at 75%. And if it was a tight game against the 49ers, if you're not leaning on Kamara, then I don't know how you talk yourself into playing Alvin Kamara. So am I too low on Kamara?
Nope.
Okay.
Offense stinks. Offense bad.
DeAndre Swift, roll bad. Offense good here for Swift.
Of course.
He's not there for me yet. 33% snap rate again, 30% in the first half, 8 targets, which we could maybe hang our hats on, are comically oversized hats, but 6 were in the second half, just under 30% red zone opportunity share, just too limited. So don't chase the targets and think that he's working his way back. I think we need to
also Justin Jackson is good. Let's stop the Justin Jackson disrespect. We can DeAndre Swift and not poop on Justin Jackson. He's awesome. Go Cats.
A bit hidden by the overall game flow for this one, but Jeff Wilson, 77% first half snap rate. Hope the salary comes down. They play the 49ers next week.
Revenge game. In-season revenge game, too. How does that change things?
It changes a lot.
Give me a salary being 68% of my process to 74%.
Yeah. Give me a salary for Wilson, because I would assume it comes down based on the fact
very tough matchup. Also a revenge game for Raheem Mostert if he's back.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. It's a really tough matchup. I would say probably 73, given the matchup and stuff.
68.
Okay.
I like that.
I do too.
Again, good roll before that game got completely out of hand.
He got a little banged up at one point too, but he came back in, so he's probably okay. But 68's low enough to be on my radar for sure. So write down it in terms of dig into it for me.
Yeah. Zay Jones, 14 targets, 145 yards.
Finally, when I get off Zay Jones, he's hey, come back. And I'm all right, fine.
So we're going to that game next week against the Lions. Is he back?
Out of obligation, yeah.
Okay.
If he can do that. I mean, I think he's a decent football player. I'm going to want to stack that game. Probably a pretty low salary. I hope.
64.
What? What's Christian Kirk?
75.
Did I not write there? Oh, I did. Okay. So Zay in the games he's played has a 23% target share. Kirk is at 24%. They're actually not a huge gap.
Yeah.
I don't think Zay gets a lot of deep works. I think a lot of that goes to the other Jones. Is that disrespectful to Marv?
A little bit.
Zay, you get some red zone work. I don't know. 64 is not low, but I wouldn't be totally off him in there.
Yeah, for the game stacks. And then David Njoku's role got better this week. 7 targets on 31 routes, 76% route rate. So I think that he's probably back on the radar for whenever we need tight ends. And they play the Texans next week.
We may need to consider the genuflect stack next week because Christian McCaffrey is 82, Christian Kirk is 75, and Christian Watson is 65. Potentially the genuflect stack.
I didn't know where you're going with that. So
there are no Jesuses in the player pool, so we'll work on it. We'll find a way to make this work. For that, we don't talk about production often, but James Conner finally did something with his volume. He led. He had 140 yards against Chargers. Previous max for him was 86, 97% snap rate. His second time above 95% in 3 games with Benjamin out of the equation. So it's nice to see that Conner can still turn the volume into a ceiling in the right spots. I wouldn't bank on it unless it's like an outlier matchup like the Chargers are, but it's worth noting. Michael Gallup set a new season high with 8 targets Thursday. 3 of those were deep. Turned it into 63 yards. He's not back to his old self yet, but I think he's getting closer. And it's possible he can have a ceiling in the right spots. He seems like he's trending up. So it was good to see because I like Michael Gallup a lot. Treylon Burks did get bailed out by a fumble recovery touchdown. I was very nervous that wouldn't count until you sent me a screenshot of the rules. So thank you. The roll was very solid. So it was masked a bit the scoring, but it was still a good roll. 70 yards on 6 targets. 2 of those targets were deep. Ran 29 routes on 35 dropbacks, which was tied for the team high. I'm still really into Burks as a value play. They get the Eagles next week. Not the best DFS game, but a pretty good real life game. So name me a salary on Treylon Burks.
Well, AJ Brown revenge game.
Oh, ooh, good.
And
will he fumble against them too?
He might. Burks, I can't get the comp out of my head of early career AJ Brown where it doesn't surprise me that he got 70 yards on only 6 targets.
Of course he recovered a fumble in the end zone. That's what he does.
Yeah, because I fade AJ Brown, he runs down and just falls on a fumble in the end zone.
Exactly.
Gets 3 targets, but 127 yards and a touchdown on them,
and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, because of the fumble recovery.
Salary, I'd have a hard time going much above 61 just because the volume is so limited.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll play him in stacks because I want that game.
Spot on 61. I think that's fine. I'm aboard. In their first game with no Kyle Pitts, Olamide Zaccheaus led the Falcons in targets with 8. He had 91 yards and a deep target. Drake London had 29 yards on 4 targets. If London's not going to dominate targets without Kyle Pitts, I'm not doing it. I had an Olamide Zaccheaus NFL All Day card at one point. I guess I'll look for $3. So
what is dominating targets here? Is it 8? It's
I'm thinking he needs a 30% target share. So 3 or 4 targets. Yeah.
So you got there. Yeah. 4 targets.
Rashid Shaheed seems to have earned a bigger role with the Saints. He ran 20 routes on 31 dropbacks. He hadn't even played 20 snaps in a game until last week, much less 20 routes. Shaheed had just 3 targets, and this offense stinks, but I would say I'm at about 2 ETNs on him, given the burst he has shown. He's got some speed, so I'm at 2 ETNs on Rashid Shaheed, monitoring at least.
Sure.
Let's go to philosophical changes and talk about bad offenses changing quarterbacks. Maybe the Jets don't belong in the bad offense bucket anymore. Mike White looked good. The Jets, still pretty run-heavy, though. They had a 48% early down first half pass rate. That was at 49% of the games with Zach Wilson. I'm guessing the rain played a pretty big role in this because White played well overall, really good efficiency. That could allow them to be more pass heavy going forward. And the productivity matters. Garrett Wilson, 95 yards and 8 targets. Elijah Moore had a long touchdown, but the snaps were still low. He had just 2 targets. So I'm in on Wilson here, even with a continued run heavy approach. I'm not in on Moore at all. Not in on Corey Davis. It's kind of just Moore for me. Where are you in this passing offense with Mike White at the helm?
Kind of just Wilson, you mean?
What did I say?
Just Moore.
Oh, yeah, just Wilson. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same. just flashbacks to, one relevant pass catcher on a team that's not great. Like, I'm sure I've given Garrett Wilson the Brandon Cooks comp in the past. Not 2022 Brandon Cooks, but literally almost every other year for him.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to be like 65, 66.
66, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
For his role playing indoors next week against a not threatening secondary, I think that's totally fine.
Okay.
I wasn't super I wish I had a couple lines with White Wilson this week, but it was only because he was in a weird salary range, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll take him here. I didn't seek him out. I'll be more receptive to him this week than I was this past week.
Yeah, same here.
The Panthers with Sam Darnold, very run heavy. Early down first half pass rate was only 30% against a very good Broncos defense. Panthers ended the game with 19 passes and 48 rushes, leaned on both Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard. Foreman 24 carries, Hubbard 17. They play Seattle next week. So do you think they stick with this plan and ruin that game? What's your read on them?
Yeah, Seattle's not right. That's my fault.
Who do they play? Oh, they're on a bye.
They're on bye. I think
they probably play Seattle after the bye.
Yeah, that's not bad. But
what's your read on them with Darnold overall?
Yeah, that's tough. I have them as the sixth. If you look at all individual games and you adjust for like game context, I have this as the sixth slowest pace of any game all season for any team. Pass rate over expectation on pass and run plays, minus 19.8%. Doesn't get a whole lot lower than that. So I think it's a spot where even if they're not moving the ball efficiently on the ground, they're just going to try to like burn clock, which I guess in a way, if you're really, really inefficient.
Yeah, you should muck it up.
Well, like if you're really inefficient, then those are more like 3 and outs that could help the opposing team. But
yeah,
I mean, Foreman, Hubbard,
Darnold's probably the best quarterback play they've gotten all year, though. So that's encouraging at least. Maybe they open it up a bit, but I doubt it. So I do want to go back to the Jets briefly because William brought up a good point over on YouTube. He's going to give Conklin a look this week at 5K. I don't want to go there for volume, but revenge game. Tyler Conklin against the Vikings. Williams' like YouTube avatar is purple. So Tyler Conklin, revenge game against the Vikings. William, I think it's destiny. Tyler Conklin all in at 5,000 for next week. The Texans with Kyle Allen, really pass heavy when accounting for context. 74% first half pass rate, in part because they were down 30 like right away. Targets are spread out. Nico Collins had 9 targets. Dameon Pierce had 6 and still got like 17 yards total for the game. Brandon Cooks and Jordan Akins had 5. In total, 10 Texans had a target. Nobody had more than 61 yards. If Houston were to go super pass heavy, would you consider anybody here as a bring back option for stacks or no?
No.
Cool. The Rams with Bryce Perkins, very run heavy as expected. Early on first half pass rate was 28%. They ran 18 plays nearly down in the first half, which is low. 5 passes, 13 rushes. Perkins negative 0.41 passing net expected points per dropback. His 26 dropbacks resulted in 100 passing yards. This offense is a full cross-off. I think their games are pretty close to being full cross-offs. They're just bad. I don't want to go there.
Pass rate over expectation, minus 15 points. That's what we're going to get game after game with them.
Agreed. So let's now go to our salary scroll for week number 13. Open up the week 13 main slate over on FanDuel and going position by position. Brandon, something caught my attention immediately, and I want to know if the same thing stood out to you.
How immediate?
Immediately.
Then no.
Joe Burrow's only 83.
Okay. That was my best guess.
An astronomical total that I think could go over.
With Jamar Chase expected finally back?
Correct.
Okay.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have a ton of high upside quarterback options. We have Mahomes, Hurts. I don't know if Justin Fields is a huge upside guy at this point because I don't know if he's going to run the ball like he did.
Yeah.
Burrow in a potential shootout.
I don't think Lamar's super high upside in that game against Denver.
He's still Lamar, but yeah. Herbert against the Raiders. Tua, not the best matchup, but a good salary.
Trevor Lawrence, touchdown Trevor is 75. I can find that. That's interesting.
Yeah, punting at quarterback means you're betting against a lot of guys who can.
I don't know if it's punting though against the Lions.
No. Below Lawrence,
yeah,
like
cool.
I don't really
like if we get Shredder Lawrence, maybe we'll call him that Shredder Lawrence after he shredded the Ravens late in that game. That could be fun. Herbert 81 is also enticing to me, despite my frustrations with the offense.
With the matchup being what it is,
but I think Burrow stands out in a pretty major way at 83 in that game.
I can see that. Yeah.
Okay, running back. What stands out to you there?
Oh boy, Nick Chubb against Houston.
That's their first game with Deshaun Watson back as well, which boosts Chubb, unfortunately.
And a revenge game.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's a revenge.
Yeah. That game's just gross. I feel like sick thinking about that game.
Josh Jacobs 95 or Eckler 92. Who do you prefer?
Jacobs by a significant margin.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I like both. A Jacobs Eckler stack is
spende.
I don't know if you can do it, but
yeah,
could be multiple touchdowns each in that game.
Indeed. Oh man. We already mentioned McCaffrey at 82, but scrolling beneath that, Dalvin Cook is in a really, really, really tough matchup with the Jets. Like that defense is disgusting. But his salary is 76. If you take out the blowout against Dallas, which you probably shouldn't do, this is cherry picking, but past 4 games, 6, 6, 5, and 5 targets for Dalvin Cook in those games. I would consider him despite a really tough matchup there. I don't really want to use guys against the Jets ever, but that's a low enough salary to give it some thought.
Yeah. The 7,000 range is a lot of borderline guys, like Aaron Jones. I'm not saying Najee Harris, but if he has a huge workload against the Falcons, I could see the case potentially. Miles Sanders, we know the upside's there. Not the best matchup, but not the worst matchup. Pirine, Pacheco.
Pirine would be Wilson. I think, a lock button if there's no Mixon.
Yeah. I think Jeff Wilson very much in the conversation too. So I think we're really going to have to figure out if any of those guys is going to hit their high end of outcomes.
One person who is, I think, like worth discussing is Dameon Pierce. His salary is $6,500 facing the Browns. I have not used him in a while. It's been a minute, and that's been a very good thing that I've not used him. Do we think that he still has a ceiling in a very good matchup, or is that offense just too bad for him to be good?
I mean, at a certain point, you got to factor in some narrative stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like they'll be
motivated,
as locked in as they can be in Houston.
Yeah.
Very good on the ground matchup. I think that there's a case for it, especially if I'm like playing in Njoku or something at tight end, or DPJ's salary's low.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a single write down running back yet, though.
Unless we get no Mixon.
Yeah.
But that's an injury contingency. Wilson is close. Jeff Wilson at 68 is close to consideration there. And I think that Pierce could be, it really depends on how starved we are for value, I think. And Cordero at 64 is worth considering. I don't feel great about anybody yet, though.
Yeah, no one really jumping out.
And I don't see anything as far as the value backs go either, below them. That
the best case is Zonovan Knight.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's go to wide receiver then. What are you seeing there?
Sorry, I was still hoping to notice something down here, but receiver, not as many high salaried guys. I mean, there are, but not multiple $9,000 salaries up here. Jamar Chase, still 89, coming off the return.
Amon-Ra St. Brown finally found the end zone this past week. He's 8,000. I'd like to get there. I just don't, it's hard to know if he'll be able to at this time. Also, Jalen Waddle 79 is interesting. I think that's pretty low for him given his given that offense.
Yeah, just above that though, T Higgins still 83 with Chase 89. That's gonna make it hard to stack that game.
Hard to stack it, but Higgins is still worth it if in stacks. Like realistically, I don't get to a lot of 8,000 receivers in non-game stacks, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Road game for Amari Cooper. Well, we see the road game narrative for Amari Cooper, but indoors Amari Cooper, which means he won't be cold. Usually it's when he's cold that he turtles. So he's indoors at least. I guess that's where he's 78. His salary is.
Give me Keenan Allen all day.
Yeah.
77.
Yeah, Keenan's pretty sick.
Or DK 76.
I'd rather use Keenan than Amari.
Christian Kirk 75. I'd rather use.
Ooh, I'd rather go Amari than Kirk personally. I think the upside equation is better. Kirk's had 100 yards twice this year. He had 96 in another, so that's kind of
that's true. I'm also
skewing things, but
a little drawn in toward the Lions matchup, forgetting that Cooper's playing the Texans.
Yeah. Juju at 69. It's uncomfy, but I feel like, actually, Devontae Smith is 68.
Devontae Smith, 68.
He's had 8, 9, and 9 targets the past 3 games with Dallas Goedert either out or limited. No touch or 1 touchdown in those 3 games, so the scoring hasn't been there, but it's a pretty good workload for 68.
If we get like full practices from Debo at 68,
I don't think we will, honestly.
I don't think we will either.
Yeah. Again, Garrett Wilson's salary comes in at $6,600, same as Josh Palmer. So that can make Palmer a good pivot if Wilson winds up getting super, super popular. What?
Deontay Johnson 65. And just like
that's upsetting.
Unreal.
So I'm guessing got priced up to like safeguard against like a Monday night bump, but how are you going to get Deontay Johnson a Monday night bump? Like
70 yards.
That'd be a new career high. So the low 6,000 range is not bad. You got Donovan Peoples-Jones, $6,100. You got Treylon Burks, 61 as well. I think both those are pretty good.
Yeah.
Like both those guys have actual yardage upside and decent roles.
Yeah. I mean, we'll take a look at like Mac Hollins, but
I used him in the 4 p.m. only slate yesterday, but I didn't like seek him out.
Yeah.
And his salary went up $500. So
because he scored.
Yeah. I don't see a whole lot in the 5,000 range personally.
Maybe I will have to like consider Richie James if there's literally no.
Oh no, we got it. Shh, we got it. Oh my goodness. Oh. Let me check something quick. We found the skeleton key for the slate. Can I interest you in a man set to face his former team? His former team or his former coach, who's not there anymore, humiliated him in like somewhat public situations. This player came back from an injury to a pretty full snap rate this past week. 5 targets, not great, but 3 of those were deep. This player had a red zone target as well. He has one of the league's most efficient quarterbacks, one of the league's best quarterbacks, in a game we want to stack on Sunday. Can I interest you in, I'm going to look up his full name. Can I interest you in, as I stall, his name is DJ? Oh, Daryl Chark Jr.
I finally figured out it was going to be DJ Chark.
Can I interest you in Daryl Chark Jr. at $5,300?
Only if we go double revenge game value receiver stack with Marvin Jones on the opposite side.
I'm not doing that part, but I'll do the Chark side. I might pee myself about how much I like DJ Chark. Because I love DJ Chark.
Well, sure, but like,
dude, listen to these yardage totals: 52, 0, 46, 0, and 16. How do you turn that down? How do you say no to that? What's wrong with you? How high have your standards gotten that you won't dumpster dive with me?
I mean,
are you too good to live in the dumpster? I was born in the dumpster.
I was born in the trash. I mean, sure. I think he's playable, but I don't think he's like a lock button
I
type of
think he's a lock
option.
button. DJ Chark in every lineup, but if you don't do it, you're a hater who hates fun. You guaranteed 2 touchdowns for Amon-Ra St. Brown 2 weeks ago. I'm guaranteeing 2 for DJ Chark this week.
I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna say, I'm guaranteeing 35 yards for DJ Chark.
No, I'm guaranteeing. Well, he might get 2 touchdowns and not get 35 yards, but
I mean, sure, we're gonna want to stack that game, so he's gonna be in the player pool, but he's not like.
I'm gonna have way too much DJ Chark. Like, so I always send my exposures to you and JJ Zachariason on Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
When I Slack you those on Sunday morning, if I have a 40 next to DJ Chark's name, slap me, hit me hard. I deserve it at that point. Like, oh my goodness. I think I had like 60% Treylon Burks this week, which was aggressive or
Like,
stupid.
what do you think his salary should be if you're this excited over him at 53?
Did I not send exposures this week? Did I send them the wrong channel? Oh, I'm trying to find what I had them this week. Maybe if I just search for Burks.
This is a great podcast. Are you frozen again? Oh, I think Jim's frozen again. Oh my! All right, I thought he was all right. That's what he gets for having Slack open. So I think he's messaging me. Lost power. All right, so Jim lost power again. I'm gonna go through a salary scroll of the tight ends because I can only assume that Jim thinks that DJ Chark's salary should be like 65, which is a bit ridiculous. But next week we're gonna have Travis Kelce at 8,400 in a game against the Bengals that we're gonna want to stack. We know that both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins come in at high salaries, so that's going to be a bit difficult. We're going to have to get a little bit creative in terms of how we stack that game. I don't even know necessarily if just mini stacks, so stacks of Chase or Higgins with Kelce and no Mahomes is going to be the answer because we're only going to be able to save so much salary for Mahomes. Probably the lowest we can get being Trevor Lawrence at 75 for next week that I'm realistically going to consider. But we also have Mark Andrews back on the main slate. So we have Kelce and Andrews on the main slate. Andrews' salary down to 7,100 after a 7-target, 50-yard game. Lost a fumble. Also dropped a very catchable touchdown pass. So we could have seen him with basically about 15, 16 FanDuel points if he converted that. Realistically, the salary or the results, the ceiling has been a bit more capped for Andrews than we would have liked to have seen based on what his potential is. I'm going to fire off a message to Jim real quick. Okay, then we have TJ Hawkinson. His role got a little bit worse this week. His first half snap rate, if I'm not mistaken, came down a decent amount. I'll look that up here. But for him overall, on Thanksgiving, 6 targets, did score, but just 43 yards. Hasn't cleared 80 yards since his 179-yard game back against the Seahawks whenever Detroit at the time was just super depleted, but Hawkinson was had a great role since his arrival in Minnesota in Week 9. But 84%, 100%, 100% first half snap rate, and then last week down to 76%. That's a bit concerning. George Kittle, just another weird spot where like we see the multiple touchdown potential from him against Arizona, but did that on just 6 targets, had 4 targets, 26 yards. This past week against the Saints, we're going to be open to stacking that game against Miami, at least with mini stacks. I don't know if Tua is going to become a true priority, but Kittle at 62, Pat Fryermuth, 59. David Njoku, 58, in a pretty good matchup against, at least team-wide matchup against the Texans. So we do have some options with potential paths to upside. Jim, are you back?
Did it not boot you this time?
No, it did not.
Okay.
Okay.
Where are you?
I went through in decent detail. Kelsey, Andrews, their sort of upside and maybe lack thereof for Andrews recently. But down through Njoku at tight end. I think that those are like the 6 options with potential upside.
Did you capitulate and say that DJ Chark is the best play of all time yet, or no?
Well, no, I was going to go back to that, but I just wanted to clarify that Kelsey and Andrews still have much, much higher upside than Hawkinson and Kittle. I think upside is a bit capped with their usage, and Hawkinson not getting a lot of yardage right now. As well, also kind of scaled back a tad in the first half, but
I would probably Fry.
I'd rather play Fryermuth and Njoku, I think, than Kittle and Hawkinson.
I think I agree on both counts. I will say Foster Moreau's role this most recent week was decent. Still didn't show the yardage upside, but it seemed like he was being used like somewhat often. Gerald Everett, I'd rather get hit by a bus. I used him a little bit too much this most recent week, but he's 54. There's that.
I'm so upset with Russell Wilson for
killing Greg Dulcich.
For like no one cares about my season-long teams, but like, you know, the expectation was this would be a fun offense. Get Cortland Sutton a good quarterback. I have a lot of Cortland Sutton across season long, but I think I'm now more incensed at the fact that like Greg Dulcich is. I think he had a touchdown called back on a penalty this week, but
he did. And 11 yards. I think that like a couple plays later, Russ threw a touchdown to some random dude,
Brandon Johnson or something.
That's not a person.
11 Brandon. Yards for Dulcich in 2 of the past 3 games.
Lawrence Cage is a tight end this week, just in case you're curious.
Oh, we're saved. Yeah, I mean, I guess the Conklin call at 5,000.
That's actually not bad, honestly. Shout out William.
You're basically banking against a huge game from Kelsey, which at 84, there's really no room for error there. And Andrews, if not the best game, so maybe he doesn't quite get there. But
I did look up Noah Gray's salary. I will admit this. This is like the first step to acceptance is admitting. Is that how the saying works? They played a lot of heavy personnel recently. He's only had 3 and 2 targets and not a lot of yards upside, but he's a good football player. He's at like, I think 1.2 yards per route run this year. So in order to get us to like, let's say 60 yards, we'd only need to run 50 plays to the Chiefs. It's doable, right?
Noah Gray, I have his yards per route run at 1.20.
Yeah. So only 50 routes and we'll get there.
Travis Kelce, 2.51.
He's so good.
He is.
I do want him to retire, though, to clear the paint for my Noah Gray dynasty shares. But
so I think that really no value on the slate at this point.
Yeah.
Aside from DJ Chark, who I still need to know what his salary should be if you're that excited about him at 5,300.
It should be 53, but that's okay.
You should have just stayed offline.
You can't defeat me that easily. I'll never die. I'll come back to defend my guy, DJ Chark, and look up Noah Gray's salary until the day I'm gone. Okay. We've seen the salaries. We've seen the slate. We've broken it all down. Note to future me. I don't know what I got this week. What's your note to future you? I think my note to future me is just stack those games and don't worry about it. Stack the games, find a way to do it, dig into the value there, but stack those games. Get back to your old process.
I think stack those games, but also that means accepting imperfect opportunities such as a DJ Chark, a Marvin Jones, an imperfect like Zay Jones situation where you're maybe
imperfect salary too.
With the imperfect salary. Just because it's better often to do that and hopes that those games score 60 total points than trying to pick the right like Curtis Samuel one-off or Darius Slayton one-off in a game that might be a lot worse.
Trust the total, baby. Trust the total. Stack the high total games. We actually have them this week, so we can revert back to our old process, and I think feel pretty good about that. We'll dig in on Thursday to see if any value pops up. Hopefully it does, but we'll see at that time. That's all we got here for today. I'm going to go see if I can get my energy to stop browning out. We'll see. To be determined. Maybe I can't. Maybe I can. We'll see. Anyway, make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We, of course, are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, et cetera, and also on the FanDuel YouTube page live 10 a.m. Eastern on Thursday to break down the Week 13 main slate. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
On Twitter, Gdula13, GDULA13.
And I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you. Why are you smiling?
Because I did it backwards.
Oh, I didn't notice. I don't look at you. Like, if I don't listen to you, why do you think I look at you? Come on. I am on Twitter. I already said that. I almost on Twitter. I could do a 13. Let's end this thing. We'll talk to you all Thursday. Have a great week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire.